Okay, so this is what I've been working on. This is the engine for the other bike, right? So we've got the front cylinder carb with the air filter off of my bike on it, because I'm going to run this with the jetted carbs. These are the new ones that I'm going to be swapping the jets out for. Um, Rear cylinder carb with the rear air filter. Um, Exhaust for the rear cylinder coming around and going to the top. The front cylinder goes from the front there. That's with the snapped bolt, but fuck it, one bolt will be enough for testing. That's going to the rear exhaust there. And what I've been working on mainly is all the wiring garbage, all these crazy ass wires everywhere. So we have the ECU, this is what controls ignition timing, right? We've got our fuse box literally mounted to my bench. This is why I'm glad I have a wooden workbench. Got my ignition switch on, park, on, off. Literally bolted to the workbench. This guy is just going to get zip tied kind of right there. Ignore that. Then we've got the wiring coming up, all routed and whatnot. We've got our fuel pump, as well as our turn signal flasher, which technically doesn't need to be plugged in, but fuck it, it keeps the wires from dangling. We then go forward, and right underneath the exhaust, we have the wires going to the rectifier regulator, which controls voltage going back to the battery from the stator, which is underneath this cover. That's basically consists of the rotor, the stator, and that's what makes the alternator, which is what actually produces the electricity to power the bike. We've got the speedo here, which I'm not using as a speedo because it would need the cable hooked up to the front wheel, and long story short, it won't read anything, but this will let me take a look at my oil light and my coolant light, which are the important ones on here. I've also got my right switch cluster, which start button, and run stop switch. Really do not care about the turn signals. Is that? No. Is that the turn signals? That shouldn't be, not on the right. Oh yeah, no, because this is the wrong cluster. Sorry. High beam, low beam, turn signals, horn, so I really don't even need this one plugged in. This is the run stop switch and the starter button. This is going to be the real important one. I need technically both of these plugged in though, because this side has the clutch sense switch on it, which is broken, but either way I need to bridge those so that it'll think the clutch is pulled in, even if it's in gear, because I don't exactly have the shifter hooked up to it. Normally that would be on this shaft right here. And then this side's got the brake light switch, which really doesn't matter, but it does need the run stop switch and the starter button for me to run it on the bench. Now I've got the radiator here, along with the radiator fan, cleverly zip tied to it, but fuck it, it'll work, and the whole thing is zip tied to the front motor mount plates. This is the coolant hose going from the engine, and then the little overflow tank. And then I still need to run a hose out of here, down underneath, and all the way to under, basically right up in here to go onto this spigot right here. So that's where the coolant goes into the water pump and then gets distributed into the engine through this hose, up into this elbow, into the rear cylinder, and then crosses over into the front cylinder with that little hose that you can't really see very well that goes between them. But yeah, so anyway, yeah, I still need to mount the ignition coils because they do need to be grounded together and then to the engine ground. And so these need to be mounted to a metal plate which is grounded. And then that plate will end up getting mounted to this board, which also is going to be mounted to the rear motor mounts, but it's just kind of sitting in place right now. So yeah, I need to run the fuel line from the fuel pump to this carb, and then from this carb to this carb. I need to hook up the choke cable, the enricher cable, throttle cables, all that stuff. But the majority of the electrical is done. The only thing I really have left is, unfortunately, the circuit breaker, which, just like in your house, is literally a resettable circuit breaker. It snapped off of the wiring because it was all brittle. So I need to get a new circuit breaker, wire these to one end, this to the other end. Yeah, it's the starter solenoid, and this literally has direct battery voltage. And so power is distributed from this to the fuse block, which are these two. Yeah, so I need to get a circuit breaker, run everything I said, and then it should be just about ready to fire up. But yeah, literally an engine on my bench that will be running. Crazy, isn't it?